I found a little crowd of mayhaps 20 folk besetting the Entinish hall in which the Sinwelt lay. I've already marked the look of that Entinish bulk embedded in the ground. The turf and chisel about it seemed charred as if by a snarled blast. No twee, its crash had saked a flash of fire. Henderson and Ogilvy were not there. I think they answered that nothing was to be done for the onward and had gone away to breakfast at Henderson's house. There were 4 or 5 boys sitting on the edge of the pit, their feet dangling and mirthing themselves until I stopped them by throwing stones at the Entinish heap. After I had spoken to them about it, they began playing at Rhine in and out of the crop of bystanders. Among these were a twosome of two-wheelers, a jobbing yarder I hired sometimes, a girl holding a baby, Greg the Flesher and his little boy, and 2 or 3 loafers and golf helpers who were wont to hang about the railway stead. There was swift little talking. Few of the low folk in England had anything but the unsubtlest Rodolori understandings in those days. Most of them were staring ruefully at the big table-like end of the Sinwelt, which was still as Ogilvy and Henderson had left it. I ween that the Falkirk height of a heap of charred lichens was let down at this inanimate bulk. Some went away while I was there, and other folk came. I clambered into the pit and reckoned I heard a one stirring under my feet. The top had whizzily halted to swivel. It was only when I got thus near to it that the self-couthness of this thing was at all subtle to me. At the first glance, it was soothly no more thrilly than an overturned wain or a tree blown across the road. Not so much indeed. It looked like a rusty mist float half buried more than anything else in the world. It needed a whist helping of wit shippy learning to on yet that the grey shell of the thing was no off-scene lift-bound, that the yellowish-white ore that gleamed in the crack between the lid and the Sinwelt had an uncouth hue. Beyond earthly had no meaning for most of the onlookers. At that time it was utterly subtle in my own mind that the thing had come from the Tungle Tye, but I deemed it unlikely that it inhaled any living white. I thought the unturning might be automatic. Notwithstanding Ogilvy, I still believed that there were men in Tye. My mind ran fancifully on the possibilities of it in holding Handrit, on the aversenesses in Wended that might arise whether we should find shats and unlikenesses in it, and so forth. Yet it was too little stour for sickness of this understanding. I felt it unthilled to see it opened. About 11, as nothing seemed happening, I walked back, full of such thoughts, to my home in Maybury, but I found it averse to get to work upon my withdrawn shutterings. In the afternoon, the look of the Falkland had wended swift much. The early tide riots of the evening bookfells had startled London with Entish headlines. An errand fanned from Tye, Fray tale from Woking, and so forth. Therewith, Ogilvy's wire to the Rodolori Rixel had stirred every star watch in 3 kingdoms. There were half a 12ish flies or more from the Woking stead standing in the road by the sandpits, a basket wain from Chobham, and a rather lordly wain. Besides that, there was somewhat a heap of 2 wheels. Therewith a stour rime of folk must have walked, notwithstanding the heat of the day, from Woking and Chertsey, so that there was altogether somewhat a ween crowd, 1 or 2 lively clothed ladies among the others. It was glaringly hot, not a cloud in the heavens, nor a breath of wind, and the only shadow was that of a few scattered pine trees. The burning heather had been quenched, but the eminent ground towards Ottershaw was blackened as far as one could see, and still giving off upright streamers of smoke. A mowing sweet thing dealer in the Chobham Road had sent up his son with a barrow load of green apples and ginger beer. Going to the edge of the pit, I found it bowed by a crop of about half a 12ish men, Henderson, Ogilvy, and a tall, fair-haired man that I afterwards learned was Stent the Kintungler, with sundry workmen wielding spades and bills. Stent was giving paths in a subtle, high-pitched reard. He was standing on the Sinwelt, which was now subtly much cooler. His face was base and streaming with sweat, and something seemed to have harried him. A stour deal of the Sinwelt had been unthatched, though its lower end was still embedded. As soon as Ogilvy saw me among the staring crowd on the edge of the pit, he called to me to come down, and asked if I would mind going over to see Lord Hilton, the Lord of the Bold. The growing crowd, he said, was becoming an earnest ramming to their dells. How were the boys? They wanted a light railing put up and help to keep the folk back. He told me that a one stirring was now and then still a list within the fall, but that the workmen had trucked to unturn the top as it afforded no grip to them. The fall echoed to be entishly thick, and it was likely that the one sounds we heard spelled a noisier win on the inside. I was swift glad to do as he asked, and so become one of the sunderrighted unbloaters within the Smaid Edda. I trucked to find Lord Hilton at his house, but I was told he was heighted from London by the 6-a-day mill tugwain from Waterloo, and as it was about 5:15, I went home, had some tea, and walked up to the stead to waylay him. The Wye of the Worlds is an original English translation by Arcticanomaly of The Wye of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. If you've enjoyed this translation, please like the video and subscribe to be notified of more content focused on the craft of writing and English storytelling. Also, don't forget to check out the playlist on your screen now for more chapters of The Wye of the Worlds when they're available. And last but not least, leave a comment below letting me know what your favourite English words were featured in this chapter, or if you'd like to see more English stories.